Lourdes had worked in the Manila City morgue for 6 years, long enough to know that the dead don't usually leave gifts. But every single unclaimed body arriving in the East Wing this month has arrived with a perfectly dried sampaguita flower clutched in its fist. At first, she assumed it was a morbid prank by the hospital staff, until she realized the flowers were fresher than the corpses themselves, smelling of a garden that hadn't existed in this part of Manila since the 1970s. When she stumbled upon a condemned wall behind the storage freezers, she found a ledger filled with names that had been systematically erased from official records, and realized these flowers weren't offerings from the living. They were the physical weight of decades-old grief, refusing to be silenced. This is the story of the names that were never spoken, the secret history of the flowers that turn to ash only when the truth is finally told. And the reason why, in the quietest corners of the morgue, you should never pick up what the dead have left behind. The 7th unclaimed body of the week arrives at the Manila City morgue with rigor already broken. Someone opened its fist after death to place a single dried sampaguita flower inside, petals brown as old blood, and closed it again. The third finger of the left hand does not bend on its own. Lourdes has to pry it back with 2 thumbs to see what's wedged against the fourth, a sampaguita, dry as paper, its 5 petals curled inward, like something trying to close itself again. Cadaver 4471. No wristband name, no family waiting in the hallway with a photograph and a birth certificate. Just a number, a drawer, and a flower that should not exist in this condition. Fresh sampaguita browns and collapses within a day. She has watched 100 garlands rot on church steps to know that. This one is desiccated whole, petals intact, stem snapped clean an inch from the base. Not torn, not plucked, cut. She logs the time, the weight, the visible trauma, same as always. Her pen stops at the field marked next of kin. She leaves it blank and writes the flower into the margin instead, because there is no box on the form for it. 6 months ago, she would have thrown it in the biohazard bin without a second look. Tonight she pulls the intake folder instead, the one nobody reads unless an audit forces it, and goes back through photographs of every walang kamag-anak the morgue has received since January. 43 bodies, 43 flowers. Different embalmers on different shifts, no note passed between them, no memo from administration, no policy that would explain why every unclaimed corpse arrives already holding a piece of a rosary garland meant for the dead of someone else's grief. She checks the date stamps twice. The pattern doesn't break once. The camera above the cold storage door hangs at its usual angle, red light dark. She remembers now. It's been dead since March, tagged for repair, never repaired. Nobody walks this hallway who isn't already supposed to be here. Nobody except whoever has been closing 43 fists, around 43 flowers for 6 months without once being caught doing it. Lourdes takes her phone out before she can decide whether that's a violation of protocol, and photographs the flower where it lies against 4471's palm. She does it fast, the way you steal something you're not sure you're allowed to want. Then she peels it free with a gloved finger, feels the stem crumble slightly at the cut, and slides it into the breast pocket of her uniform over her own heartbeat, before the assistant coroner comes back from his break to seal the drawer. Whoever is doing this wants the dead to be found holding something when no one else is coming to hold them. The thought arrives whole, uninvited, and she doesn't like how true it feels. She's closing 4471's drawer, the steel cold enough to sting through her glove when she hears it. 3 drawers down, on the far wall, a latch clicking open. Not sliding, not the metal groan of a drawer that's used every day. A clean, mechanical click, the kind a mechanism makes only once, releasing after a long time under pressure. She knows that drawer. Everyone who's worked this wing longer than a year knows that drawer. It was welded shut in 2019, after the flooding, after the paperwork that never got filed right, after someone decided it was easier to seal a problem than solve it. Facilities confirmed it in writing. She has seen the work order. Lourdes stands very still in the cold, gloved hand still resting on 4471's now sealed drawer, and listens for a second sound that does not come. The weld held for 5 years. It didn't need to hold this one. The florist holds the photo of the flower at arm's length, like it might bite her. "That's not mine," she says. "I've never sold sampaguita that looks like that, not once." Lourdes has come to Quiapo on her day off, phone open to the picture she took of 4471's flower, chasing the only lead she has. The stall owner, a woman named Oring who has sold garlands outside the church for 30 years, turns the phone sideways, frowning at the curled brown petals like they've insulted her craft. "Fresh sampaguita blackens and collapses within a day," she says. "Anyone selling flowers in this city knows that. What Lourdes is holding isn't wilted. It's been pressed, preserved on purpose, petals flattened just so, the way you'd press a flower into a book you never wanted to close. Only place I've seen that done right," Oring says, already turning to her next customer, "is Baclaran. The rosaries they used to make there, for the ones who never came home." Lourdes knows what she means before she says it out loud. Everyone her mother's age knows what "never came home" means without needing the word "disappeared" attached to it. Martial law took people quietly and returned nothing. No body, no grave, no answer. Just a name that stopped appearing in conversation because saying it out loud cost something. Families sewed grief into rosaries instead, garlands pressed and blessed at Baclaran Church, sampaguita flattened between missal pages so the flower would outlast the mourning. Lourdes has seen photographs of those garlands in a museum exhibit once, behind glass, captioned with a date and a number of the dead that still isn't final. She drives back to the morgue, with the flower's meaning sitting heavier in her pocket than the flower itself ever did. The East Wing has been condemned since 1987. A fire in the records room, structural damage never fully repaired, the whole corridor sealed off with a padlocked gate that administration renews every year without anyone actually going in to check. Lourdes has a master key she isn't supposed to have, given to her by a retiring supervisor who told her every embalmer eventually needs one. Tonight is the first time she believes him. The corridor smells like old smoke that never fully left the walls. Her flashlight finds water damage first, then a door hanging half off its hinge, then a room that was clearly meant to be forgotten. The wall stops her cold. Names, in charcoal, hundreds of them, written in different hands over what must be decades. Some faded to ghost lines, some dark and recent enough that the dust hasn't settled into the strokes yet. Near the bottom, 43 aims sit apart from the rest, the charcoal barely dry, the handwriting consistent, as if written in one sitting, one hand, one night. She counts without meaning to, 43. The same number as the flowers. Her flashlight moves down the list on instinct, the way a hand moves toward a wound before the mind decides to look. Fourth from the bottom, in handwriting far older than the fresh names above it, is a name spelled a way she has only ever seen it spelled once. In her Lola's rosary book, in the dedication her grandmother wrote by hand for a brother nobody in the family speaks about anymore. Lourdes has heard that name maybe 3 times in her whole life. Always in a lowered voice, always followed by a subject change. Some names get written down not to be remembered, but so someone, someday, will have to find them. She reaches out and touches the charcoal, half expecting it to smear like fresh soot. It doesn't. It holds, dry and permanent, under her fingertip, waiting the way something waits when it already knows it will eventually be found. Tio Ben doesn't look up when she walks in. "You found the wall," he says, still logging a delivery, pen moving without pause. "Took you longer than I thought it would." Lourdes stands in the doorway of his office, the flower photo still open on her phone, her grandmother's misspelled name still burning behind her eyes. Tio Ben has worked nights at this morgue for 31 years, longer than she's been alive, longer than the East Wing has been condemned. She has never once heard him raise his voice, and somehow that makes what she's about to ask harder to say out loud. "The flowers," she says. "You know who's putting them there." He sets the pen down, finally meets her eyes, and for a moment he looks less like a man being caught and more like a man being relieved of something heavy. "Nobody's putting them there," he says. "Not the way you mean. Nobody living carries 43 flowers into a locked cold room without a single camera catching them. Then how? They're not placed." He says it plainly, the way you'd state a fact about plumbing. "They're what's left over, When somebody finally stops waiting for a body that's never coming home, that waiting has to go somewhere. Sometimes it goes into a flower in the hand of whoever's lying there instead. Lourdes wants to laugh at him and finds she can't get the sound out. Tioben pulls a ledger from beneath his desk, its cover swollen from water damage, its spine cracked at the same page every time it's opened. 1978, stamped on the inside cover, half the ink long gone to rust-brown bleeding. He turns it toward her without ceremony. Entry after entry lists bodies received without names. Martial law's worst months, he says, when morgues across the city filled faster than paperwork could keep up. When families stopped coming to claim anyone, because claiming someone meant admitting you knew them. Beside each unnamed entry, in the coroner's own hand, a small drawn flower, 5 petals, the same shape over and over down page after page. He drew one for every body nobody came for, Tioben says. Said it was the only funeral some of them were ever going to get. Lourdes runs her thumb down the column of tiny charcoal flowers and feels the year click into place around her like a lock. Every unclaimed body this year, every one of the 43, died the same way her grandmother's brother disappeared decades ago. Alone. Unwitnessed. No family standing over them saying a name out loud. No marker, no grave. Nothing but a draw number and a date. She has spent 6 months embalming strangers and never once asked why none of them ever had anyone come. They're not random, she says, and it isn't a question. No, Tioben agrees. They're the ones nobody's still looking for. Not out loud, anyway. The flower isn't the haunting. The flower is what's left of somebody's grief once there's nowhere else for it to live. Lourdes closes the ledger herself this time, her palm flat against the swollen cover, feeling the dampness that's never fully dried in almost 50 years. She thinks of her Lola's hand, the way it trembles now, around a rosary she still prays every night, for a brother she's never once, in Lourdes' whole life, allowed anyone to name in front of her. Tioben watches her put it together, and something in his face goes gentle in a way she doesn't like. The way people go gentle right before they tell you something you can't take back. They stop coming, he says quietly. Only once somebody finally says the name out loud. Not writes it, not thinks it, says it. He doesn't tell her whose name she needs to say. He doesn't have to. The drawer slides open on the 3rd try, its rails stiff with disuse, and Lourdes realizes her hands are shaking too hard to do this quietly. 3 a.m., the cold room lit by a single flickering tube, everyone else on shift somewhere she can't hear them. Drawer 4471 again. The body inside has no name she can attach to it. No family history, no shared blood she could prove in any court or clinic. Just a number. And a flower that isn't there anymore because she pocketed it 2 weeks ago, and it's been sitting in a plastic bag in her nightstand drawer ever since, next to her rosary, like she couldn't decide which drawer it belonged in. She takes the flower out now, sets it on the tray beside the body's open palm, where it should have stayed all along. Lourdes doesn't know why this name, why this body, why tonight, instead of any of the other nights she's stood in this room doing nothing. She only knows she has read the name off the charcoal wall so many times in the last 2 weeks that it sits in her mouth now like something she was always going to have to spend. She says it, not loud, barely above the hum of the refrigeration unit. Just his name, her Lola's brother, taken in a year Lourdes wasn't alive to remember. Never buried, never returned, never spoken above a whisper in her house, for as long as she's been old enough to notice the silence around it. She says it to a body that isn't his, because his body was never given the chance to end up anywhere she could reach. The flower on the tray goes black. Not wilts. She has seen wilting, watched it happen to sampaguita in real time outside Baclaran. This is different. This is petals collapsing to ash in the space of one exhale, the way paper goes when a flame finally reaches the last unburned corner. No smoke, no smell. Just 5 petals turning to fine grey dust between one blink and the next, settling on the steel tray like something that was never really solid to begin with. Lourdes doesn't move for a long time. The rest of her shift passes in a fog she can't name. And then, past midnight, a new admission comes in. Another walang kamag-anak, another body nobody's coming for. She checks the hands before she can stop herself, both palms between every finger. Nothing. No flower. The first arrival in 6 months to come in empty-handed. She finds Tio Ben in his office and tells him what she did, expecting relief on his face, or fear, or something she can point to and understand. He only nods slowly, like a man confirming a diagnosis he already suspected. 42 left, he says. Not congratulations, not surprise. He says it the way you'd report an inventory count, and that's what unsettles her most. That he already knew the number would move, and already knew it wouldn't move enough to matter tonight. This place has never released a body as fast as the truth just wanted this one found. He tells her that in 31 years, he's seen bodies held for months waiting on paperwork, on family finally scraping together bus fare, on a coroner too overworked to sign a release form. He has never once seen anything move as fast as what just happened in that cold room. A name spoken, a flower gone, a debt paid in under a minute that the whole system couldn't manage in 3 decades. Lourdes goes home before dawn, pulls the charcoal photo up on her phone, and starts reading the list again from the bottom. 42 names left. 42 flowers, still waiting for someone to finally say them out loud. Her grandmother's hand closes around nothing on the blanket, fingers curling into a fist, the exact size and shape of something that isn't there anymore. Lourdes has spent a month working backward through a list of 43 names, one flower turning to ash in a cold room every few nights, one number falling off a charcoal wall no one else in the building will admit to seeing. Tonight the wall has one name left. She already knows which one. Her Lola stopped eating 4 days ago. The nurse calls it the body shutting down the way bodies do, in their own order, in their own time. Nothing sudden, nothing anyone did wrong. What the nurse doesn't have a chart for is the way her Lola has started saying a name out loud for the first time in 40 years. Over and over, quiet and clear. A name Lourdes only ever heard her family speak in a whisper meant to end conversations, not start them. She is asking for her brother. Lourdes doesn't go home to sleep. She goes to her nightstand, opens the drawer, and takes out the plastic bag she has kept there for a month. The very first flower, the one from 4471, the one she photographed before anyone could throw it away, and then couldn't bring herself to release like all the others. She has read 42 names into 42 cold rooms to strangers who shared nothing with her but a number and a drawer. This is the one she was always going to have to say to someone who could actually hear it. She drives to the hospital with the flower on the passenger seat, not in her pocket, like it deserves its own space for once. Her Lola's room is dim, machines keeping quiet time in the corner, the window cracked enough to let in the sound of jeepneys 3 floors down. Lourdes sits at the bedside, takes her grandmother's hand, thin now, the knuckles too large for the fingers around them, and sets the flower on the nightstand between them, where a rosary already sits half-tangled from being held too long by hands, too tired to hold anything well. She says the name, full name this time, not the whisper her Lola always used, not the fragment that was allowed in the house. The whole name, the way it must have sounded the last time anyone called it across a room, expecting an answer back. Her Lola's eyes open. For a moment there is no recognition in them at all, and Lourdes' chest goes tight with the fear that she's said it to no one, that this is just a body doing what bodies do at the end, unrelated to any of it. Then her grandmother's hand, resting slack on the blanket for 4 days, opens, fingers unfurling slowly, the exact motion Lourdes watched a corpse's fist make in a cold drawer a month ago. Except this time, it isn't releasing a flower. It's releasing 40 years. On the nightstand, the sampaguita goes to ash the way the others did, quietly, all at once, between one breath and the next. No smoke, no sound, just 5 petals collapsing into a grey shape that no longer resembles a flower or holds any weight at all. Her Lola's breathing settles into something calmer than it's been in days. Some names only need saying once, as long as it's finally said to someone who was always going to understand what it cost. Lourdes sits there until the machines even out, and the room goes quiet in a way that isn't frightening anymore. Down at the morgue, 43 drawers stand empty tonight for the first time all year. Not sealed, not condemned, not waiting on anyone. Just drawers, steel and cold and nothing else, the way a drawer is supposed to be. now that every hand inside them has finally been allowed to let go. If this story stayed with you, I think it was meant to. New stories from across Asia, every week, right here. I'm Haunted East. Subscribe if you want to keep listening.